What if God created marriage more for our holiness than our happiness? I don't know about you, but I tell my wife all the time, I'm a sanctification machine for you. I make you more like Jesus because I'm so hard to live with.
My question is, I've seen several Charlie Kirk videos, and you even mentioned it here tonight, where he is encouraging us to get married, have children. That's one of the most important things you can do. Mm-hmm. And for the record, I am married with children, but I'm wondering if 1 Corinthians chapter 7 talks about, it would be better for man to be alone if he has self-control. Mm-hmm. And I also know that there's debates within the Christian community on whether or not we will maintain those relationships in heaven. Mm-hmm. Why is that so important?
Well, the foundation of any civilization is biological two-parent family marriage. Without that, the rest of society will degrade. And one of the biggest problems we've had in America is something called no-fault divorce, which was started by who, by the way? Does anyone know? Ronald Reagan, who was divorced himself, signed a law in 1969 or 1970 in California, well-intended. People who were in very bad marriages, maybe abusive marriages, were now able to get out of them. But the unintended consequences of it, since the law is a great teacher, made people think that, well, marriage is just like a contract that you can break if you don't like it anymore. And that's been a disaster for the family. In fact, if I were to ask people sitting in this room, how many people in this room have been scarred because your parents got a divorce, I'd say more than half the room would raise their hands. The number one fear of kids between the age of 5 and 17 is that their parents are going to get a divorce. We've made the most important relationship in the world easy to dispense with. Do you realize that marriage is not a contract, but we treat it like a contract? Do you realize that marriage in the United States, in most states, is the only contract in which the party that wants to get out of it can get out of it without consequence? By the way, why do we have same-sex marriage? It wasn't so much LGBTQ activists. It was the fact that Christians and heterosexuals bought into the idea that marriage was just about feelings. It was the romance view of marriage rather than the covenant view of marriage. Well, if marriage is just about feelings, the romantic affinity of two people, why not two men or two women? And if it's all about feelings, then marriage has nothing to do with children. Well, if there isn't an institution designed to protect children called marriage, what institution does protect children? There isn't one. We bought into the idea that the adults get what they want and the kids are just going to have to live with it. Sorry, that's selfish. When you have kids, you've invoked a great responsibility that you ought to carry out. I'm reminded my mentor, Dr. 𝗥𝗘𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗘𝗏, used to say, he was asked the question, have you ever thought about divorce? And he said, no, never divorce. Murder several times, but not divorce. Marriage is hard because you put two broken people in one relationship, there's going to be trouble, right? Which is why Rodney Dangerfield famously said, my wife and I were happy for 20 years, and then we met. But, as Gary Thomas pointed out in his book, Sacred Marriage, the subtitle of the book is worth the price of the book. The subtitle goes something like this: what if God created marriage more for our holiness than our happiness? I don't know about you, but I tell my wife all the time, I'm a sanctification machine for you. I make you more like Jesus because I'm so hard to live with. It doesn't score me many points. But Paul is essentially saying if you can devote yourself to the Lord and remain single, do that. On one hand, we've degraded marriage in our culture. On the other hand, we act like if you're not married, there's something wrong with you. No, you're not. You might be devoting yourself to the Lord. If you can do that, do it. But not everybody can do that, right? If you universalize singlehood, we're going to be extinct pretty quick. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.